It's time for your stimulus update now on this Monday, August 3rd. And boy, we thought we might have a breakthrough this weekend. And then, no, once again, it falls backwards. Well, high-level members of Congress, the White House, got together over the weekend, and they said, according to Chuck Schumer, that it was the most productive meeting they've had thus far. But did we get anywhere? No. So, great, they had a productive meeting. I guess just that means no one threw like any White House china at each other. But they actually still did not get a bill passed or any kind of framework laid out. And they're still miles apart, in fact, trillions of dollars apart on the stimulus plan. Now, all of that, we'll get to their back and forth bickering on this and where they stand. All of that against a backdrop of CEOs of major companies sending a letter to members of Congress and the White House with this exact message. The CEOs of some of the world's biggest companies, they came together and they sent a letter to the White House and to Congress saying, quote, by Labor Day, we foresee a wave of permanent closures if the right steps are not taken soon, that these businesses will go out of business. Howard Schultz, of course, the CEO of Starbucks, including 100 other CEOs of Salesforce, Alphabet, Facebook, Microsoft, Walmart, McDonald's, Disney, Quibi, IBM, Merck, Marriott, and Business Roundtable, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce all sent this letter saying we need another stimulus and we need it now. So Congress not really moving very fast. But that letter coming from the nation's CEOs, some of the biggest ones. Meanwhile, this weekend, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, and White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows all made clear in separate TV interviews that they're still miles apart on this. And Mark Meadows going so far as to say that he is not optimistic that they are going to have a deal anytime soon. Listen to Mark Meadows on Face the Nation.
I can tell you that we spent the last 3 days, actually last 4 days, trying to get to some kind of consensus, at least to start negotiating. Yesterday was a step in the right direction. Our staffs are actually working today. We'll be meeting again tomorrow. But I'm not optimistic that there will be a solution in the very near term. And that's why I think the effort that Senator Martha McSally led on the Senate floor to extend the enhanced unemployment was the right move. And yet Senator Schumer and his Democrat colleagues blocked that.
So this back and forth over the idea of one of the big sticking points, the unemployment and enhanced insurance benefits right now for those people that are unemployed. Of course, those expired last week. Now, the argument from Republicans or Democrats is that, the main thrust of this entire negotiation has to be around the virus right now. That has to be the focus. And that's what Nancy Pelosi was saying yesterday when she was interviewed on one of the morning shows. She said, they're just not focused on the virus, and she's referring to Republicans. She's like, they're focused elsewhere. So them's were fighting words. Listen to Nancy Pelosi on that.
And that is one of the points that we still have not come to any agreement on. In our legislation, the HEROES Act, we have a strategic plan for defeating the virus: testing, tracing, treatment, isolation, mask, sanitation, and the rest. And we just still haven't come to agreement. We started this March 4th. Our first bill was testing, testing, testing. Our most recent big bill with the expansion of the PPP was about testing, testing, but it still has not been implemented by the administration. If we're going to open our economy and have our children be in schools, we have to defeat the virus.
So she went on to say that she doesn't think the administration's heart is in defeating the virus. And Steven Mnuchin wasn't having any of that. He fired back in response to that very question.
Your reaction to what you just heard Pelosi say, and are you any closer to an actual deal? It sure doesn't sound like it.
Well, first, let me just say I was surprised that the speaker said we don't agree on the need to kill the virus. We absolutely agree on the need to kill the virus. And let me just say, the president acted very aggressively when this virus first came from China to shut down all travel. And since then, we have aggressively funded over 7 different vaccines into production. We're very optimistic that we will have results out of these vaccines, and we'll have a vaccine available by the end of the year. So
Well, that might not be the case, though, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, because reports this morning show that even if we have this virus complete, that it might only be effective, according to the reports this morning, in 50% of cases. 50%. So the fact that this idea that this magical virus or this vaccine is going to solve all our problems, I think you can throw that out the window. According to these reports, it's not likely to do that at all. I mean, it might be similar like the flu vaccine. There's different strains. We never know what it's going to be, and you might get this strain. There's like 200 different strains that you might possibly get, and we're not going to actually find the one that you're going to be protected against. The real question, though, is the $600 unemployment benefits. And there still seems to be this argument about that it causes you to stay home from work. That if you get this $600, you do not want to go back to work. You'll fight tooth and nail to stay home. And Nancy Pelosi said this is just garbage. That $600 is vital to the American people right now. Take a listen to this point about the $600.
But the $600 is essential. It's essential for America's working families. And again, to condescend, to disrespect their motivation is so amazing how insistent the Republicans are about a working family and their $600 and how cavalier they are about other money that is going out.
The $600 plan, we now know, according to the studies, does not hinder people from going back to work. In fact, it kept people able to pay their bills. And according to the Yale study, this was not a disincentive for people going back to work. Neil Kashkari is a Fed official from Minnesota. He was asked that very same question from John Dickerson on Face the Nation. He's a Federal Reserve official. He doesn't really play politics, but he was asked specifically, do you have any evidence that this $600 hurts people, that it keeps people from going back to work? And again, the reports say no. What does Neil have to say about it? Listen.
Let me say, inside of this bill they're debating on the $600 unemployment, weekly unemployment help, one of the Republican arguments is that at $600, there's some number of workers who are getting paid more than they would in a job, and therefore they're staying at home. Do you see any evidence in the data that supports public policy based on that idea?
Well, not right now, not when 20 million people are out of work relative to February. There's just so many fewer jobs than there are workers available. At some point, it'll be an issue. When we get the unemployment rate eventually back down to 5%, and we want to get it back down to 4% or 3.5% where it was before, yes, that disincentive to work becomes material. But right now, it's simply not a factor in the macro economy that we have in the U.S. because we have so many millions of Americans out of work.
There you go. That's not me saying that. That's both the Yale report and Neil Kashkari, Federal Reserve official out of Minnesota. And so, this idea that this is somehow going to hurt us, and we're quibbling over $600. That's at the heart of all of this right now. They wanted to pass this sort of like emergency extension last week for 1 week. It's not a solution. It's a temporary fix. And they want to keep punting this further. Now, they go on vacation. The Senate goes on vacation on August 7th, which is this Friday. And are they going to go for a whole month without having a plan in place? I mean, that would be political malpractice if they do that. On the House side, Nancy Pelosi has already canceled vacation for August. I don't know what Mitch McConnell is going to do. He's been quiet all weekend. We haven't heard from him. And it sounds like the White House is sort of leading the charge on all of this right now. And, I don't know. I have a theory I'll get to in just a second. But Senator Bernie Sanders was asked about all of this. He's been so anti-Senate lately. He thinks there's just been an absolute lack of leadership on the Senate side. And he was fired up this weekend. Listen to him take a swipe at Mitch McConnell.
During this entire period, 2.5 months, the U.S. Senate has done nothing. There has been no piece of legislation under Republican leadership coming to the floor of the Senate to deal with this crisis. So as you've indicated, we got 30 million people who have lost their jobs, who are now going to lose that $600 that they desperately need. We got millions of people who are facing eviction and foreclosure. We have people and children in this country who are going hungry. The immediate crisis is that we have got to respond and respond now, today, tomorrow, because people right now are at their wits' end. They are literally wondering how they're going to feed their families in the richest country on earth.
This $600 thing, I saw someone just saying in the chat, like, even if there are a few bad apples that milk it and stay home, do you think that you're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, that those few bad apples, sort of mixed metaphors here, but really, no. The data is in. People need this money to pay for insulin for their children, to put food on their table. As one of our viewers this morning said, that $600, they finally actually got their unemployment. They never got it for 17 weeks. They were waiting for it. They finally received it. He had to pay up all of his bills. All of his bills. He got caught up, paid off all of his back bills that he owed, and now he finds out the $600 is done, and he can't continue. He said he feels like he's fighting a losing battle. They've lost their job. They're being forced to stay home. The U.S. is the richest country in the world, and yet we're quibbling over $600. Well, the Democrats are holding firm on that. Steny Hoyer basically said it's $600 or bust. We're not moving. We're not changing that. You better extend it. And Republicans appear to be, I don't know, maybe waffling a little bit. I don't know. We'll see on this. But there is something else happening on the President Trump side. As you know, his poll numbers are not looking good right now. There's only a few weeks until early voting starts. And didn't I predict this, folks? I predicted this last week here on the show, and I threw it out to you to see if you would agree with me, that, you know, the White House is going to start to paint Mitch McConnell as the bad cop. And clearly he has been in this whole process, right? That they're going to try to paint him as the bad cop, and the White House, to try to salvage their campaign right now, President Trump is going to come in and say, hey, you know what, Congress, get off the pot. I'm going to solve this. And they're going to move in some unilateral way with executive order in order to pass some sort of a stimulus plan. And that's exactly what appears to be happening, according to reporting in the Washington Post this morning. And from Jeff Stein, who's done an amazing job during this whole coronavirus stimulus package. The Trump administration examining options for unilateral action if no coronavirus deal is reached with Congress. So what does that mean? Well, that means that the Trump administration is looking at options to get some of this stuff through without having to rely on Congress at all. This is according to people with knowledge of these deliberations. Stephen Moore and Phil Kerpen also weighed in on this. These are two outside economic advisors to the White House. They published a Wall Street Journal opinion piece on Sunday that urged President Trump to declare a national economic emergency and announce that the Internal Revenue Service, that the IRS, would temporarily defer the collection of payroll taxes. Now, President Trump's got to love that. Stephen Moore is a White House advisor, an economic advisor, although a third-party advisor, very close with the White House. This idea that President Trump could, after all, get his payroll tax that he wants. His payroll tax cut that he wants. Remember, Congress has said, no, we're not going to put that in the bill. Mitch McConnell said that's out, we're done. He could declare a national economic state of emergency and cut payroll taxes for people, among other things. What else could he do? It's hard to know exactly, and according to the reports, they're not quite sure exactly what he could fully do in this. But he might be able to allow some sort of a moratorium. He could maybe step in with an eviction moratorium executive order. He could maybe step in with a payroll tax cut. Maybe he could also step in by executive order and issue these additional $600 per week unemployment benefits. You know, the House of Representatives controls the power of the purse, right? The funding has to come from the House of Representatives. That's how our Constitution is written. And the Senate does not, the House does. But under an economic national emergency, could the president come riding in on a white horse and try to save the day? I mean, that could be one smart move. To me, it's too little too late at this point. I mean, this is something the president should have shown leadership on back in April and May. Should have been out there in May saying, hey, that's great that we passed that first stimulus, but guess what? This is going to run out soon, and we need to get something on the books right now through the end of the year. We need to get all parties together. Don't go on vacation. Republicans, you're not going on vacation. Democrats, you're not going on vacation. Let's go to Camp David and have a meeting and get a new plan put together. But they didn't, and now it's too little too late. But this is the reporting this morning from the Washington Post. Could the president, if he gets frustrated with these back and forth negotiations right now with the Senate leadership, that he's going to do an end around? I have to tell you, people want to say, oh, it's the Democrats holding things up. It's not. They already passed the HEROES Act back in March. or back in May, I'm sorry. And Republicans right now, there's about 20 Republicans, as Lindsey Graham said, that won't vote for anything. They're just fine to not pass any bill at all on the Senate side, on the Republican side. They think they've already spent too much money. And the country, yes, we are sitting on $27 trillion in national debt. And that's their argument, that we've already spent enough money. But it's okay for us to keep pumping trillions into Wall Street, right? Make sure that everyone on Wall Street's happy and those businesses are kept afloat, airlines and others, and go through federal bankruptcy protection and everything else. But the American people who are going to be out of their job, out of their home, they get screwed once again. Thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. Make sure that please you smash that like button if you'd be so kind. Let's see if we can push this up to 10,000 likes on today's video. That'd be a nice goal. And also, please, please, please subscribe to our free morning newsletter. It's totally free. It's delivered to your inbox first thing every morning. Totally free. You can read it in about 5 minutes. It'll give you the news that I think is important to start your day, plus a little bit of humor. All right, much love to all of you. We will see you back here once again tomorrow morning at the same time. If you're new here, we do this show every morning live at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, 6 a.m. Pacific Time. We'll see you next time, everyone.